Robert Dekirk.
We'll begin with roll call. Mayor Dekirk.
Here.
Councilman Dickinson.
Here.
Councilwoman Gavin.
Here.
Councilman Hug.
Here.
Councilman Morris. Councilman Mudrin.
Here.
Councilwoman Pullman. Here. Councilwoman Reardon.
Here.
Councilman Turk. First this evening will be citizens to be heard on agenda items. First is Quinn Adamowski.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Quinn Adamowski, resident of Joliet. I'm here to talk about adding single-family properties to the current rental inspection ordinance. Luckily for all of you, we have 2 nights of this, so you'll have 8 minutes of me. Tonight, I want to talk about the arguments that you're going to hear against adding single-family properties. So these are the arguments that we've heard over the course of, in my experience, 4 years, and I think for some others who've been involved in this issue for 20 years. So the first argument you may hear is that we can't add single-family properties to the current ordinance because it will increase quote-unquote costs. To this point, no one has actually articulated what these increased costs will be to either the landlords or to the renters. Is it possible that there is a minimal cost of $100 for an inspection? Yes. But I don't think that's a large price to pay to ensure that we have quality and affordable housing here in Joliet. If a landlord is a good property manager, he or she can pay that fee, and they also get a waiver for 5 years. So at the end of the day, that comes out to $1.50 per month per property over the course of 6 years. Not a bad deal. We may hear that there's too much money for remodeling costs. Well, that can't be because we know that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing with property maintenance. Or maybe there's something concerning about housing values increasing. Well, that can't be an argument, right? Because they would never ask you as representatives of the city to artificially depreciate our values, our number one investment in the community. So I still don't understand, and I'd like to hear the actual true costs that we're being told will be passed on to tenants. We hear that now is not the right time. This issue has been discussed for 20 years. Now is the right time. Neighborhoods are at an inflection point, and we're going to choose who we want to be as a city. The time is now to act. We need to protect the neighborhoods, especially in the near west side and the east side. And yes, this issue extends all the way out to the far west side. We've heard that it's unnecessary, that it's drivel, that it's bad, that it'll be hard to implement. If it's so bad, if it's so impossible, then why have Aurora, Elgin, Rockford, Naperville, Bolingbrook all pass this in one capacity or another? And they implement it. If they can do it, why can't we? We've heard that this will lead to a lack of property sales. Not an issue in those communities. There's no such thing as Joliet exceptionalism. There's not some bubble around us that's protecting us from doing the right thing. We've heard that they will not want to do business here. Okay, fine, then don't. Where are you going to go? You're going to go to Bolingbrook where they have this ordinance, or Aurora where they have this ordinance? So the point is that it is necessary, it's not drivel, and it's something that has been well thought out in other communities. We've also heard that we are anti-renter or anti-landlord. That is absolutely not the case. We are anti-poor living conditions and pro-quality of life. We are anti-slumlord and pro-property ownership that invests in the neighborhoods. That's what we want, and we feel that the inclusion of single-family properties in this ordinance will help achieve that to a point. It's not the magic bullet, but it's a tool in the tool chest. We've heard that the data suggests this is a minor issue, that only 1% of these properties have this issue. Our current model relies on complaints. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense. How can we possibly know what the real issues are if citizens are not calling? There's no systemic way to actually monitor these properties. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next is Erica Holmes.
Good afternoon. So I want to talk about being a landlord and how the single-family inspection program could potentially hurt us. My family owned property in the city. I know a lot of other landlords. With that being said, the program, the city cannot afford it. You only have 7 people to be able to do inspections. On the single-family home rental inspection program was last projected to cost at least $5 million over the next 10 years and overwhelm the existing rental inspection program implemented by the city. If the city family home rental inspection program would add 5,000 new properties into an already struggling system at the projected cost of $500,000 per year to taxpayers at a time when most are fighting to make ends meet. We have 6 families that haven't paid rent since March. Does that make us bad landlords because we let them stay in our space? No. People right now, their economic development, lack of economics, has forced us to look the other way to let people stay in our properties. And that's not fair to blame certain, bad tenants on everybody. Everybody get a bad tenant right there. Doesn't mean that we're bad landlords. When you increase our economic development, disparities, who's gonna get hit most by this? It's gonna be the East Side, people that cannot afford home ownership. Yeah, I understand that the people that are pushing for this live in a nicer community. We don't even have a grocery store on our side of town, and yet you wanna add more costs to the landlords. I don't think that's fair. And instead of pushing something, how about have a conversation with us? How about landlords matter as well? And everybody cannot afford being homeowners. So we have to take into account that people need affordable housing. And what does that look like? Then people are losing their jobs. What does that look like? Now we got homelessness because now you went up on our fees. We cannot sustain as small business owners because you want to go up on our fees. That's it.
Thank you.
John Schultes?
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. I'm John Schultes from the Three Rivers Association of Realtors. There are several realtors and landlords here regarding the agenda item of adding single-family rental homes to the rental inspection program. I'd like to ask the landlords, realtors, and other community stakeholders here with me today in opposition to this proposal to please stand up. Thank you very much.
Joliet.
Single,
I do.
excuse me. Single-family rentals can already be placed into the rental inspection program when there are code violation or police calls to the rental properties. This proposal is a solution in search of a problem. While we realize the good intentions behind this proposal, we feel that adding all single-family rental homes into the rental inspection program will have negative unintended consequences for the city of Joliet, taxpayers, property investors, and tenants as well. It is bad for the city and taxpayers because right now the expansion would weaken the city staff's ability to respond and fix property code violations. Owner-occupied property code violations are the vast majority of violations, with a small percentage originating from rental properties. Neighborhood Services estimates just 2% of the annual calls mention the property being a rental unit. The expanded program would cost a minimum of $500,000 a year. That is $5 million over 10 years, and that doesn't even include vehicles or equipment. Mandatory inspections of rental properties have invited lawsuits by property owners in other jurisdictions because they are a violation of constitutional private property rights. It is bad for property investors because the majority of single-family rental properties have never had a property code violation, yet this proposal would force every single landlord to submit to inspection. Landlords often rehabilitate vacant and rundown properties in order to make them more attractive and more affordable in comparison to apartment buildings. This proposal would create more bureaucracy and red tape for people who want to invest in Joliet. It's bad for tenants because rental inspections are an invasive violation of tenants' privacy rights. To have these inspections done, tenants must take time off from work to schedule them. The increased cost of inspections would force rents to go up, no matter what anyone would say. The bottom line is that the goal of this rental inspection program should be to encourage property upkeep and discourage code violation. Adding hundreds of single-family rental properties that are already compliant with the city standards into the inspection program will not achieve these goals. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Renita McCollum.
Good evening. I'm here to represent Southland Black Chamber of Commerce and Industry. I am the chair for our real estate committee, and I'm here in opposition. I work with several investors that have bought properties here in Joliet, and these investors rehab these properties and turn them into the state-of-art homes. People that rent these homes have physically said they're never going to move. So if you have people that are not keeping up their properties, I believe we have a program called Neighborhood Services, and those people get fined for not keeping up their properties. I don't know why we have to have another program when we already have one. Thank you.
Thank you.
Isaiah Williams.
Hello, everyone. My name is Isaiah Williams, Jr. Number one, I'd like to say I pay a lot of property taxes. And I am a small business owner, investment properties around pretty much in most of the local council districts. That's my father before me. My property, listen, I am adamantly against this ordinance. This ordinance goes after the part of the housing community that really doesn't deserve it. I really would like to advocate for you, for the council, to go after those real slum landlords. And I'm gonna say that without saying the names of them because I know they have to be on your radar. Based on your complaints that you get from tenants and things like that, that should be your way to go after these and make those people come into ordinance, come into compliance. I'd like to share a quick story with you because when it comes time for me to have to evict a tenant or something, I don't get a lot of help in that area, especially after I document, I do everything to show that these people are not what they signed up to be. But when I have to deal with a tenant that I finally get out of a property on my lower west side property on Rob Street, they left a large water bill. And I tried my best and the darndest to get the water bill over to them, but it had to be paid down before that, and it got out of hand. So by the time that I was able to evict these people, I had to recoup from their security deposit to pay for the water bill. Did not touch any of the damage that they did to the property. Okay, once again, stuck with a bill. I still went and after that, after I got those people out, I went and rehabbed the building top to bottom, new windows, boilers, the whole nine. Okay, so I'm once again taking another hit. So my point is this: please go after the ones that need to go after, and these small businessmen and ladies, please let us be for right now. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Good afternoon. So I am a property owner in the city of Joliet. I pay a higher tax rate than an owner occupant does pay. We've already paying more. Mr. Adamowski had mentioned, yeah, maybe $100 more. That's still more. We don't need to pay more. What you've got in this room is a whole bunch of local landlords, local property owners who are here. We're adamant. We're going to take care of our properties. We're not the problem. If you institute this, you chase us away, and in comes the people that are the problem. You don't want to implement this. There's no need to implement this. All of the bad actors you already have on the books, what you can do to stop them. You don't need something additional to do that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mark Wallace.
Hello, good evening. My name is Mark Wallace. I'm a landlord here in Joliet. I've been here now for, since I was 29 years old. I'm 50 now. Time went fast. And I say that because I started from scratch and worked my way up to now having many properties in Joliet. I've worked cooperatively with Joliet. I've built a decent business, and I've helped facilitate great housing for people who have been underprivileged, most of the time not equitably taken care of. And I have to say that it's really become a ministry of what I believe I'm on the planet to do to help other people. There are many landlords in here who I know who've gone through the exact same experience, who are putting their families in line with other families and helping to bridge the gap in between the advantaged and the disadvantaged. This situation, I don't believe really, I'm opposed to it. And it's something that is already in place. It's something that is very easy to use. I think that there's a communication protocol that maybe hasn't been able to get out to everyone to let them know about this process. And that maybe can be able to help take care of this issue. We're already paying very high water bills. My taxes are through the roof. And I'm trying to manage and then also be affordable at the same time and be competitive and provide a quality service for people to be able to live for long terms. I think our main key word here is collaboration. We need collaboration to be able to work because we understand that there are issues, but the people who showed up here tonight are not the issues. These are the ones who are the glue to our society, who are helping us be able to bridge the gap, who are being able to help to bring families and have equitable housing for everyone in Joliet. And I'm asking you to help us help the ones who need help. Thank you.
Thank you.
Eddie Rudiger.
Eddie Rudiger, President-elect and acting president of the Three Rivers Association and Joliet resident. So you've heard a lot of the different financial aspects. This will cause the city to lose a lot of money. This is also going to have a disparate impact on those that are struggling financially. It will cause the supply of rentals to go down. Landlords are already discussing selling property, which will then, a flood of property in certain areas could cause prices to go down. So with that happening, it's not going to solve the problem. I live here. I eat here. I play here. We all want City of Joliet to be outstanding. What this does is it gets rid of these amazing people that you see me here leading and representing. They're going to get pushed out of the market, not because of a $100 fee, but because of the regulations and because of the extra time and the energy. And it's going to make it harder to get renters and get people to invest in Joliet. What you're going to end up with is the cities that were mentioned at the start of this, Aurora, Bolingbrook, and those municipalities see nothing but the hedge funds and those big rental companies coming in. That's what we're trying to explain to you. Those rental companies don't care what the city looks like because every fine you hit with them, they just pass it on to the tenant. So you're not going to solve the problem of getting rid of the slumlords. You're going to make the slumlords richer and open that door to hurt those that are the most financially vulnerable in our communities. I thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak on an agenda item this evening? on to the interim city manager to discuss tomorrow night's items.
Thank you. Good evening. Tomorrow's council meeting will begin with the presentation that will occur as a combination between our fire chief and Holston to talk about the recent fire and some of the efforts that are being made to get those properties back in working order and occupied. Under proclamations, we have the Neighborhood Hero Awards. These are honors that the city gives for property owners and residents who display extraordinary pride in their property and do some interesting things to help the neighborhood. And we're happy to say we have 11 families that will be recipients of that award. Under council committee reports, we'll have 4 reports, CTIS, Economic Development, Land Use and Legislative, along with Public Service. Under consent agenda, we'll have the typical approval of minutes. We'll have the July 20th and 21st minutes. Under licenses and applications, who would have thought a Dunkin' looking for a drive-through permit seems to be one of our major business attractions these days. We have a property at 5951 Theodore, which is the northwest corner of Theodore and Droughton. The property is zoned business, and it is proposed to be the site of a filling station and convenience store. Along with that development, Dunkin' is part of the mix, and they've requested a drive-through permit. We had discussion earlier today at Public Service. They're recommending approval along with our engineering department. And there is a site plan in your packet. Any questions on that? No public hearings tomorrow. Under ordinances and resolutions, we have an ordinance that amends the section of our code that imposes the real estate transfer tax. Going back to the 90s, as council knows, the city has annexed from Will County into Kendall County. Well, it appears that a real estate transfer tax never really specified Kendall County. By making this amendment, it'll ensure that there are no recorded property sales within Kendall without that tax being paid. I can't tell you whether, what the dollar amount is perhaps of lost revenue during that time period, but clearly this tightens the loop so it won't happen in the future. Any questions? Next ordinance is an ordinance that designates 9 West Cass Street as a local historic landmark. We had an application that was submitted by our Joliet Historic Preservation Commission for landmark status for this building. The current owner of the building is the Illinois Rock and Roll Museum on Route 66, who's supportive of this particular designation. It's a 3-story terracotta building constructed 1929-30, and some of you may, I don't know if anyone will recall it, but certainly know that this was once the White Store, which was a pretty prominent dry goods purveyor in downtown Joliet. And point out that the structure meets 5 of the criteria as established by the commission. And we do have the representative here if there are any questions. Okay, the next item we heard a lot of public comment on. It's the ordinance that would amend our code relating to inspections of single-family residents. I'm going to have Kendall Jackson come up and do a little bit of a summary, and he could also certainly have members of the Land Use Legislative weigh in, since this was a subject of their committee.
Thank you, Steve. Mayor and Council, this proposal would amend the Code of Ordinances to require the registration and inspection of single-family rentals. The current ordinance excludes single-family rentals from the rental inspection program. However, we have done some amendments to the ordinance, and there are provisions within the current ordinance that provides for the inspection of single-family rentals that are problematic. So we do have currently 500 single-family rentals in our rental inspection program. These homes would be required to register with the city and would be subject to inspections. Staff has a concern about the cost of operating and managing a program like this. As I stated, we currently have 500 single-family rentals in the program, in addition to about 2,000 multi-unit properties in the program. And that equates to about 10,000 units that we are currently inspecting on a rolling basis. The Land Use and Legislative Committee did review this item. There was a great deal of discussion at that meeting. And again, staff will follow through and carry out any policy or program that we are directed to do from the City Council. But I think it's contingent upon me to mention that we are concerned about the cost of managing a program like this. When we currently have a staffing complement of about 7 inspectors. There were some numbers that were shared with the Land Use and Legislative Committee about a year and a half or 2 years ago. We estimate that we've got about 5,100 single-family rentals in the city of Joliet. So adding those to the program in addition to the 10,000 units that we're currently inspecting would require additional staffing, and not only inspections personnel, but a clerical to help support the folks in the field. Vehicles on top of that would also be required. So it would be a major budget issue for a program like this. There is the possibility of raising fees to support the additional staffing. Again, that's a policy decision. I think that needs to be discussed a little further. That pretty much concludes my presentation. Any questions?
Questions? Yep.
So Kendall, the 500 that are on the inspection list now, these all got there because of violations or police calls, or how
Yes,
did they get there?
violations, police calls. If there are 2 or more complaints, you are enrolled in the program. And you can get a 2, 4, or 6-year certificate based on the condition of your property. But yes, we do have a provision currently that would allow those types of problem single-family home rentals to be enrolled in the program.
And then there's fines if they do not comply in
Yes.
a timely basis?
Yes.
And I heard you right then, there was a guesstimate out there that there's 5,100 additional that we really don't have any record of that, do we?
Well, this is based on staff's look at, tax records. We've also looked at the utility records to try to determine how many properties that are out there that are rental properties. So that's our best estimate at this point.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Just one question. So if it's your best estimate, most likely you might be on the low side just because you haven't uncovered all of the properties. So at this point, if we just did round numbers, you're talking about an additional 100 inspections a week in 1 year, each year.
Yes, an additional 100 inspections. The other thing about a program like ours is we do have the rolling inspections because there's either a 2, 4, or 6-year cycle. Mm-hmm. So with single-family rentals, we're thinking that the majority of those would be 4 or 6-year certificates because those are probably in better shape, maybe better landlords taking care of those properties. So even if we were to raise the fees, those aren't fees that are coming in every year to support the program because we can only charge a certain amount per year as an annual registration, but those inspection fees would not be hitting the city every year because of that rolling 2, 4, or 6-year inspection cycle. So it's very difficult to, when you're looking at budgeting for something like this, to say that we're going to have a set number of dollars every year to support the program because we just don't know.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Kendall, currently, what are the annual per unit registration fees?
$100. No, I'm sorry, Councilman. The initial inspection fee is $100. The annual fee is 20% of the initial inspection fee. So $25 on an annual basis.
Are the fee structures, I didn't see that we had any fee structures being offered at this time. Is that
No.
correct?
No, there's no information about fee structure here.
Yes.
A lot of these are complaint oriented, like you said. Some of them we don't even know about until the neighbors call, but the problem is, this is not just a neighborhood problem, this is a citywide problem that's concerning a lot of the neighbors, because I get a lot of the calls. And I stated at the land use meeting, because these are complaint by the neighbors that live there, a lot of these older ladies that are single ladies, widowed, living in these homes, are afraid to call because of retaliation, because of the issues that are going on in their house next door or across the street. And that's a problem. And I know it's easy to say, oh, well, you know, you've got apps on your phone, this and that. Well, I'm sorry, if you're like 75, 80 years old, you don't have an iPhone with an app on it, nor do you have a computer. So you have to try to keep calling and calling until you get somebody to talk to you. So we forget sometimes about our older generation, and that's an important thing here, because a lot of our neighborhoods have a lot of older folks in there that are scared to death in their homes. They're afraid to even go out in their yards. And some of these properties are being deteriorated. And, you know, I'm all about business and entrepreneurship and all that. However, if you are a good landlord, we're not punishing you. I mean, you can get a certificate for 6 years for whatever it is, 65 or 100, instead of having 100 every year, which is gonna cost you even more. It's just to keep up your property. And then this will penalize the bad landlords, the absentee landlords, the ones that don't even live in the United States. That's where the problems are. But until we can get a handle on this, we're not gonna penalize the good landlords. It's the bad ones that we have to go after, but we have to know where they're at, these houses, because otherwise they're only complaint generated. And that's not good enough, because our people are living in fear. And it's our west, north, south, east, it's all over. It's not just the cathedral area, which I hear all the time. It's not just the cathedral area, it's citywide, and you know that as well, Kendall. Would you not agree?
I agree.
Thank you.
I agree with you. I think the issue is that it would be difficult to manage and operate the program with our current forces that we have and the current budget that we have. We would have to take a strong look at increasing the fees. The other possibility could be bringing in a third-party inspections firm, but then we would have an issue with our collective bargaining units.
Isn't there an upgraded computer program, though, that we could put in place? I know ours is pretty antiquated.
The new program that we have, the Munis Tyler program, we're currently using that to help support the program. But there are some issues with getting that to, I guess, work properly with an inspections function. So this again would be placing a burden not only on the staff, but on the current system that we have in terms of trying to keep track of all the properties that are out there.
Have we talked to David Brainerd from IT?
Yeah, there's been constant dialogue between IT and neighborhood services in terms of the Munis program.
Well, I understand, it's not to penalize renters, it's actually to protect some of the renters as well. Because, you know, if they have a home that's being deteriorated and their landlord, they've called 10 times and he won't fix the plumbing or the door or whatever, these are the landlords that we have to go after. And these are the ones that are sliding under the radar because they know Joliet does not have a single family inspection policy. And that's what I think we really need.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kendall.
Thank you.
Yes.
So, Kendall, I'm hearing that are we speaking of just the upkeep of the property, or are we also talking about the quality or potentially lack of quality of the tenant? Is this, I don't see that this addresses that at all.
So, there is a tenant screening that's part of the program. But, and I think as we've heard, there are issues with tenants. There are only so many things I think that a municipality can do when it comes to the actual person living in that unit. And that's on the landlord to try to deal with that. So this program is basically focusing on enrolling all single-family rentals into our rental inspection program and providing some type of service, whether it's registration or inspection or both. And that's just the city dealing with the landlords.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kendall.
Thank you, Mayor.
Or actually, don't go away, Kendall. We have two more items coming up that Kendall's going to do the presentation on. Both relate to our Community Development Block Grant Program, one being the action plan and one being a substantial amendment.
Thank you, Steve. The first item, I think this is memo 411-20, and that is the fiscal year 2020 annual action plan and the fiscal year 2020 through 2024 5-year consolidated plan. The consolidated plan, of course, is a requirement of the federal government in order for the city to receive its allocation of block grant funding. Our allocation for fiscal year 2020 in the federal fiscal year is different than the city's budget year. So some of these numbers, when I say 2020, it's not an apples to apples comparison. But at any rate, we will be receiving $957,178 for federal fiscal year 2020. The breakout would be $460,000 in infrastructure, $100,000 in community facilities, and that would be the Riverwalk relocation of the pantry. An additional $50,000 for the Spanish Community Center. I believe they have ADA retrofits that are sorely needed for their building. $90,000 for Holston Human Capital Development, which is a subsidiary of the Holston firm, and that's for programming. An additional $30,000 for the Senior Snow Program, $75,000 for housing, rehab, and safety. And then we are allowed $152,178 in administrative and planning fees. This item was subject to a public hearing on July 23rd at the Land Use and Legislative Committee. There was also a public comment period from July 16th through July 25th, and we have not received any comments through that period. The Land Use and Legislative Committee voted to bring this item for full city council consideration.
Kendall, if I could, one thing. Thank you for that breakdown. The Senior Snow Program has been very successful to the point where we can't fill all the the people who sign up for it. There's a waiting list every year. It's not just seniors, it's people with disabilities. I don't know, 30, although it's great what we're doing, I'd like to see more go to their program. Would there be a way to divert some of the money off of this to their program?
There could be, Mayor. I'd have to have a discussion with our staff to see if we could move some dollars around.
Right. I think it's maybe 100 people who were on a waiting list last year. They wanted to sign up, but we couldn't provide it for them.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Mayor, for bringing that up. We certainly need that. Our seniors and the ones with disability, we run into that problem every year. So if that could be done,
okay, I'll have the discussion and see if we have flexibility.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next item is a resolution authorizing a substantial amendment to the federal program year 2017-2018, and this was for the annual action plans that resulted from the previous 5-year consolidated plan. So there was a reassessment of needs, And there was a desire to reallocate some of the dollars from the 2017 and 2018 program years. We would be reducing the clearance funding from 2017, and that's $105,000, as well as the program year 2018 clearance funding of $100,000, and increasing 2017 budget by the $105,000, and also the 2018 budget by $100,000. The resulting changes to the action plan would be housing rehab, and that's for our senior services center, $36,500. Community facilities, fire equipment, $219,630. Infrastructure, and this would be the Grover reconstruction, $220,000. Infrastructure, Hebert reconstruction, $243,217. And again, the relocation of the facilities at Riverwalk, and that's $105,000. Administrative fees of $63,500. And then we would have $50,000 in potential relocation fees that we would hold in the event that the city would have to participate in moving any of the residents at the Riverwalk facility. Again, senior services, $65,000, community facilities for Riverwalk, $100,000, street reconstruction and infrastructure, $255,270. There's also the need for the 4th Avenue water main, and that's $290,000. Holston Human Capital, $90,000, and then here we are, Mayor. Public Service Senior Snow Program, $60,000. Any questions?
So which number's right for the senior snow removal? The 35 or the 60? I'm a little confused on that then.
17 versus 18.
Or the 30, I mean.
I think it's the 60. I think it's adding an additional 30, so it's 60,000.
Because the Evergreen Terrace, former Evergreen Terrace project has gotten well over $4 million out of CDBG since it's, if you will, purchased by the city. Can we move some of those dollars around?
Again, I'll have the discussion to see if we have that flexibility.
I do have a question.
Yes.
So Kendall, since they're not going to tear that building down, they're going to remodel it, wouldn't that free up some funds?
Which building?
At Riverwalk, the community center?
So the building that the current pantry is in is coming down, and that's part of the overall renovation.
Right.
So there was a proposal to build a new separate pantry, and there was no additional funding for that. So the decision was made to increase some of the space that is in the existing administration building to handle the pantry. So instead of a new building that would have been more dollars, they would be retrofitting an existing building at a lesser cost.
Well, right, but so they never had the money to redo the new building, is that what you're saying? They never got that money?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Thank you, Kevin.
The next resolution is a resolution that authorizes the use of motor fuel tax funds for the 2020 resurfacing program. Later on in the agenda, there's an item with regard to the award of the contract, but this contract would allow the use of MFT funds in the amount of $2,433,640.56. The next two resolutions, I'm going to turn this over to Derek Conley, who's our Economic Development Specialist. We have two items. We have a letter of intent between the city and the Illinois Department of Transportation, along with the memorandum of understanding between the city and Cullinan Properties. And I'll point out that Cullinan is in attendance as well tonight if there are any questions.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So as Steve said, I'll be covering 2 agenda items tonight. Both of them are pertaining to the proposed Rock Run Crossings development, which is to be at the northeast quadrant of I-80 and I-55. This is currently 263 acres of vacant land, or largely vacant land, or agricultural land. And Cullen is looking to come in and do a mixed-use development there. It's remained unchanged for decades. This is partially because there's just not great access to the site right now. Getting to the site is a little bit difficult. Really, to activate this site, an interchange off of I-55 is needed. And tonight, or not tonight, but tomorrow night, we do have an opportunity to move closer to getting that interchange. So I'm going to explain both of these agenda items. The first one is a letter of intent between the City of Joliet and IDOT. And basically, IDOT sent us this letter, and they said, if you want this interchange, the next step is to sign the letter of intent. So the letter of intent basically says, do you agree with this project, the scope of the project, kind of where the interchange is going to go, some of the basics of it. And then on top of that, they are requesting that the City of Joliet contribute $12.3 million to the construction. IDOT is willing to contribute the other portion, which is about $75 million, but the city does have to come up with that $12.3 million. So the way this would work is the city would actually go at the bond for that $12.3 million to make that payment to IDOT. We are currently working on economic development incentives where they would be attached to the property, so that development on the property would actually go towards making those bond payments. And that's kind of how it would work in the perfect world. Of course, there is some risk to that, because what happens if development doesn't occur? Something happens in the market, Cullinan doesn't develop the property, there's no taxes that are generated that can go towards paying off the bonds. So with that possibility, the staff and elected officials have all indicated we don't want to take on that risk. Cullinan, as a developer, that's what developers do, they take on risk. That risk should be shifted to them. So that's where we get into the second agenda item, which is an MOU between the City of Joliet and Cullinan. And what it does is it shifts that risk from the City of Joliet to Cullinan. It does this in a couple of different mechanisms. Probably the largest one, or the most important one, is immediately if the City of Joliet gets an invoice from IDOT and there's no development on the property, Cullinan would come in and immediately pay for half of that invoice. That would cover about $6 million. There would be another half of that, $6 million. To recoup that, what the City of Joliet could do is, according to the MOU, we could activate an SSA on the property. Cullinan is the property owner. So if we have bond payments that are due, we would activate the SSA and basically recoup whatever money is needed in order to make those bond payments. And that could happen, not just once, but over several years until bond payments are fulfilled. There is some risk with that, as I outlined in the council agenda, or the council memo that I put together. Basically, what staff put together, or when we were looking at the MOU, we tried to say what could go wrong here. What if Cullinan goes away? They say they're not paying. And we worked with our consultant, SB Friedman, to basically try and make this as limited in risk to the city as possible, and we think we accomplished that. There are some other points I did make in the agenda, or in the MOU, pertaining to land use. And then in Exhibit B, you can actually see a breakdown of what the proposed land use would be. And one more, or another point that I do want to make is that this is not the entire ask that Cullinan is going to have. This is just $12 million. There is going to be other infrastructure that will be required on site, and they're estimating that the total amount of that ask to the city could be $100 million. So this is only a small portion in order to get the interchange. If we think that the interchange is that valuable and that this site is going to be activated and there's going to be tremendous economic growth on that property, then this is going to get us that much closer. But we just need to keep in the back of our minds that there's going to be another ask here. Our consultant, SB Friedman, is currently looking at the entire development of the 263 acres to see if this is going to be a worthwhile project for the City of Joliet. With that being said, there were a couple of council members who asked for an opinion from SB Friedman. They were unable to be here tonight, but I did email you a letter that they drafted, and then I also put it in front of you for your review. So with that, I can take any questions, or I can bring Cullinan up and they can answer questions as well.
Did Cullinan want to speak to the council?
Yeah, please.
Sure, come on.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, everyone. My name is Rick Joseph. I'm Cullinan's General Counsel, and thank you for the opportunity to speak with you this evening. I'm happy to answer any questions, but what I did want to just address is this question of what's before the council tonight and tomorrow night, and that is this memorandum of understanding as it relates to the interchange and IDOT's local share. You have to ask yourself, if Cullinan were not in the picture, there was no such developer for this site, and IDOT had approached the city and said, for an investment of $12 million, IDOT will invest 70 to 75 million, and the city will have its interchange. You have to ask yourself, would that be something that the city would want to do after especially not having had that interchange for all of these years? I can't answer that question for you, but I would venture to say that the answer to that is yes. For $12 million, you would leverage 75 million and have the interchange that you deserve. Now, what we're proposing here, and staff has proposed today, is that the local share that would have to be paid to IDOT, the 12 million, will be paid from the property. So it will be paid from the development incentives that will be generated by the property. If there is no development incentives, and I'm here to tell you, Cullinan's going to develop the project, so there's going to be development incentives, but we understand, and all attorneys have to look at this from a worst case analysis. If there is no development incentive, how is it that the city recoups its $12 million? That's the reason why we've agreed to the special service area. The property that we are proposing be part of the special service area, once the interchange is in place, has significant value. By our estimates and by Mr. Conley's estimates, but SB Friedman will verify this, approximately $35 million. So you're getting security equivalent to $35 million for fronting, if you will, one half of $12 million, because Cullinan is going to front the other one half. And so there is ample security for purposes of making sure that if development does not take place for whatever reason, if Cullinan, the market or whatever, does not proceed, or Cullinan doesn't pay what it's promised to pay to the city, which would be the one half of the 12.3 million, that you have adequate security to ensure that the taxpayers are not put at risk. And so with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that the council might have about either the MOU or the project.
Questions?
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rick.
Okay, the next item under the.
Yes.
Mayor, I would like to take time to thank Dekirk and staff. Certainly they're not here, SB Friedman and Cullinan's representatives, because this has been a very complex project with many moving parts. And the fact that nobody, including myself, had questions at the end of the presentation shows you just how detailed this has been. So I would like to thank everybody involved. Derek, good job.
Next item for tomorrow's agenda are bids and contracts. I won't go into those. They have been reviewed by our Public Service Committee. I will mention one thing. Usually I don't talk about the city manager report the day before. I wait until the actual meeting. Due to a family conflict, I will not be in attendance tomorrow, but I wanted to ask the council if there has been any thought given to the matter of the internal affairs investigation that we've talked about at the last two meetings. You recall that the Will County State's Attorney, the Will County Coroner, the Major Crimes Task Force had completed their review of the Eric Lurie matter. We were preparing to do the internal affairs investigation utilizing an outside firm. There were some questions raised by council. There were some ideas that perhaps some other agencies would do this. Up to this point, we're still looking for an answer on whether the council would approve of us going with Hillard Hines or the firm known as Gold Shield, which was recommended by our Labor Council, Clark Baird Smith. So I throw that out there because this is still something that we're waiting to accomplish, and clearly if we don't get this going, it just means more waiting time. So it's a question.
Mayor, if I might
Yes.
respond to Steve's question. Steve, thank you for bringing that up. I did reach out to, I think we had discussed even the state police. I sent a letter to the state police, to a Captain Wilk, that did confirm what you said about them not being able to do an admin investigation. But what he did send back to me was a couple of agencies, okay? The one being Hillard Hines, being one. The other suggestion that he did have was the B4 Security Solutions out of Bolingbrook. And so I have sent an email to them as well. I have not gotten a response back, but that's another tool in the toolbox, I think.
You're soliciting?
Yeah, the question came up at our last meeting about where can we go with the investigation, the administrative investigation. There were some things that were thrown out, as you know, names, and so I did, because I believe it was Councilman Hug said he wanted to see something in writing if we did, so that's my, that was my reason of emailing the state's attorney, the state police. And so there is that, I think that we don't need to delay it anymore if we can find somebody to go ahead and do this administrative investigation. So I just.
Well, we were told stuff in executive session that we're not supposed to repeat, so we should probably have this conversation in executive session.
Executive session, this was in our last.
Right.
No.
We had the discussion. I believe there was a comment.
I remember the discussion. We were told things by you in executive session. You told us not to repeat publicly, so we should have this conversation in executive session.
Well, what you were told in executive session didn't have to do with
Yes, it
this
does.
specific.
I don't agree. It does have to do with this. I think that'd be proper. Yeah.
I don't have any problem with that, okay.
Okay. That's all I have, Krista.
Mayor,
Yes.
has there been any communication from the Attorney General's office, Illinois Attorney General's office? Any update on that for any participation on any level?
We have not had any communication as to the status of their look at this.
Right.
Next is public comments. Is there anyone that would like to speak under public comments this evening? There's no public comments. Is there a motion to go into closed session to discuss?
Excuse me, just a moment.
Yes.
There was a couple of, Ms. Perez, and she now want to talk, she said she had signed up earlier, Krista. Oh,
She's here.
oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see you there. You're not going to talk? I'm going to talk to them after. Oh, okay, I'm sorry. I wanted to make sure that you were, available to hear that, because I knew you were here to talk. Okay. Didn't see you, apologize.
So is there a motion to go into closed session to discuss personnel, collective bargaining, land acquisition or conveyance, pending or threat litigation, after which the meeting will be adjourned?
So moved.
Second.
It's been motioned and seconded. Councilman Dickinson?
Aye.
Councilwoman Gavin?
Aye.
Councilman Hug?
Aye.
Councilman Morris?
Aye.
Councilman Mudron?
Aye.
Councilwoman Quillman?
Aye.
Councilwoman Reardon?
Aye.
Councilman Turk?
Aye.
Motion carried.